You know, I might have flown too close to the sun with this project. So amigos, it is I, your favorite illustrator slash extremely delayed video poster. Super sorry about that. One of my favorite bands that goes by the name Lewberger is putting on a musical, sort of off-Broadway. So I was kind of like, oh, why don't I just sort of book a ticket? So that's exactly what I did. And I got some premium tickets, which included a little meet and greet. At that meet and greet, I kind of want to make Lewberger a little gift. My incredible plan is a leather-bound tome with all the decorative trappings of a fantastical illuminated manuscript, combined with the functionality of a 3-ring binder for easy collation, editing, and reorganizing of sheet music, concert plans, and I don't know, the several thousand meters of restaurant receipts Keith's been racking up. Not to toot my own horn, but I think this is a really rad idea. Now, the real question is whether or not I can actually succeed at this plan. You're gonna have to watch to find out. Now let's get this party started. First step, gather the materials. We're gonna need some book boards, lining paper, leather for the binding, some tools and paints and dyes and gold and hardware elements and decorating elements and etc. And of course, you're gonna need a bookbinder. In this case, me. Let's get to measuring. We're gonna have to measure this 3-ring binder because, I do want this to be functional, which means it has to comfortably contain 8.5 by 11 paper. Let's grab our slices of bookboard and, hey, wait a minute. This looks familiar. A different project, a different day. Let's give them a slice. And now we got our 2 beautiful little bookboards. These will be the covers. I'm gonna take a leftover scrap and make that the spine. With a spare, just in case something goes wrong. The spine is very, very straight, and there's nothing wrong with being heterosexual, but I'm aiming for that kind of old book aesthetic, so I'm gonna try and bend the spine. And I won't say this is the right way, but this is the way I did it. I gouged some lines down it so that it would bend easier, then used a round object, in this case a sword cane, and a hammer to sort of shape it. And then at the end, it worked great. But on the downside, now it's bendy, which is not great for the long-term stability of your binding projects. So of course, I take some PVA glue, which is a super sturdy glue once it dries, and gave it a brush in, which worked great, but also warped the damn thing. So then I had to put it back under the sword cane and kind of rubber band it and make sure that it stayed in the same shape. Oh, and while I'm at it, I'm gonna take some rubber bands, because I realized at the time these are the perfect way to do this, and add some of those little ribs to the spine. So when I put the leather over this later, they'll make some nice little creases. Now let's get that leather. To be honest, this was the part I was most excited about. I'm one of those people, I like playing with new things. I like trying new stuff. I attempted to roll this out very satisfyingly, and as you can see, it didn't work. Agony. It is real sheepskin, veg tan, which is very important for being able to add dye and such later. Let's trim this leather down to size and start putting the pieces on. First, the spine, forgive my head, which, as you can see, I'm going to use a bone folder, or in this case a pen, because I couldn't find my freaking bone folder, to really make sure the leather adheres to this board. The last thing I want is this to peel off. That would be a fate worse than death. For me. It would cause me to die. So give that a smoothen, and it's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to pop the boards on, making sure to leave a distance between the spine and the board so that the book can actually bend. And then take my old friend PVA glue to, again, make sure this bad boy adheres. You gotta do this kind of quickly because the boards tend to warp when you expose them to PVA glue. So your best bet is to really quickly glue it up, really quickly glue it down, smooth it, and then put it under a really heavy object to ensure that it dries safe. Now that the book's finished its overnight stay in the glue drying book hotel, we're going to go ahead and trim the edges and sort of fold the leather over. We're gonna wanna make sure that this has good adhesion and goes around the edges. So let's cut these corners using the tried and true slap method, and then bring our old friend PVA glue, my beloved. Then I use the point of a bone folder or a similar sharp object to crease where the leather's going to go so it folds neatly. And then I use, again, a bone folder or similar hard object to fold it around the edges and ensure that there aren't any air bubbles left over. The last step is to crease where the leather meets the spine so you get a nice divot like that. That helps the book to close nicely and also ensures that it doesn't crease anywhere else. While that glue is drying in the overnight book hotel stay, I'm going to start on the design for the cover. I went into this completely blank-minded. There were no ideas in my head, so of course I just started by really badly drawing the members of Lewberger, and then just slapping colors and shapes everywhere, which is just how it goes. I cut out the part of me actually drawing them because I did so badly for such a long period of time that frankly I'm a little bit embarrassed, and I feel like they could sue me for doing a terrible job with their likenesses, so we're just cutting that bit out. Anyway, I settled on sort of having a tan-ish color for the leather with a little bit of gilding to add some flair and a touch of turquoise paint just to add a bit of color. I was kind of aiming for like kind of a rustic, think like Wizard of Oz sort of situation. And honestly, I really like how it turns out. Get a good look now because that's the best it's going to look. It does not look this good on the actual book. And while I'm here, might as well make a little design for the spine as well. I took a picture of the spine to make sure all the spacing would be accurate, then just kind of futzed about until I had a bit that I liked. After that, a trip to the trusty printer, and it's time to start actually engraving the leather. This part was honestly the most nerve-wracking part of the entire situation. I mean, don't get me wrong, sheep leather isn't that expensive, but it's expensive enough when you're working as a freelance artist, okay? It is expensive enough. There's a reason I only use free editing tools. Anyway. Oh, plus I really did not want to like goof up here and have to start over. Mostly because I was fully running out of time before I would need to pack my bags and leave for the Northeast. And I kind of did not fancy my chances of accomplishing my crafting filming setup in a hotel room. If you watch and observe, you will notice that none of the stuff that I'm using is actual leatherworking tools. Again, leatherworking tools are kind of expensive. Maybe I should have invested in some, but, you know, I'm a real believer that if you have the skills, you don't necessarily need specialized tools. Oh, whoops, sorry, my sound was on. Didn't mean to do that. I'm gonna go ahead and speed through the rest of the carving, just so that, you know, we can kind of get a nice little view. At one point, I realized that this sort of metal Eiffel Tower pen was the perfect tool for engraving the leather with this design. It was the perfect thickness. It worked great, and it didn't have any ink left in it, so that's what I used for like the rest of the video. Oh, here I took some random tools from the garage to make a fun little funky design. I think that part honestly turned out great. Emboldened by my success, I was like, oh, I'll add some nice texture to the clouds using the screwdriver, and also like a golf peg when the screwdriver started to look bad. This was a disaster from start to finish. This was the point in which, like, I am infuriated that I even did this. I, like, kept continuing because I was like, maybe it'll look better if I keep working on it. Not the case. It kept looking worse, no matter what I did. God, it haunts me. It's gonna haunt me forever. You see that? I hate that. Agonizing. But there's nothing I could do about it now, so I was like, well, forge on ahead. To do the front cover, I kind of wanted to have the main figures sort of masked off so that they'd be lighter than the rest of the book. So I thought, oh, I'll use some masking tape. And then I put it down, realized immediately it was going to like bring up the finish on the leather and like kind of make it so that it was like suede-y, which would mean none of the materials would work. So I very quickly dismissed that idea. So I just figured, whatever, I'll just be super careful with the stain and maybe it'll turn out okay. And this kind of worked. I should have just used like a really big rag and laid down like a base coat for this instead of using like a small sponge, because that resulted in a lot of like overlapping texture that I didn't necessarily want. At this point, I kind of pivoted. I was like, all right, because I was already on like strike 3 of making goofy mistakes with this thing. I was like, all right, if it's gonna look kind of weird no matter what I do, I might as well just lean into it and kind of pretend I was going for that rustic look. Remember, folks, if you can't make it perfect, make it rustic. Works every time. But, ooh, it is really satisfying watching the dye go on. It really starts to look like an actual leather thing. Here I'm adding the paint. Lucky for me, the engraving that I did earlier meant that adding the paint and staying within the lines was super easy. Then at this point, I was like, okay, my plan was to add black dye inside the lines, black leather dye inside the lines, but it didn't really adhere as well as I was hoping to, and also it wasn't that black of a black. It sort of just made it look like kind of like a muddy gray, and it didn't even blend with the brown very well. So in the end, ignore how much effort I'm putting into this. A lot of this won't matter in a minute. So in the end, I actually wound up going over the whole thing with a black Posca pen instead, because that also has the ability to bind to leather, but also has a stronger color, I guess I should say. It has a more vibrant pigment, so it pops a lot more. All right, I'm gonna add the gilding now. Gosh, I thought about cutting out all the footage in which you can see my giant head, but as is a theme with this video, the gilding also did not go as smoothly as I thought it would. I really should have practiced quite a bit more because I had a lot of trouble getting it to adhere. And that's probably because I'm not doing a very good job. But you know what? It's fine. At this point, I was just gritting my teeth going, rustic look, rustic look, rustic look, rustic look, as though I was going to summon the primordial spirit of the good enough artist from the depths of the deep. Artist would be able to fix the mistakes that I had made. Of course, this did not happen, so I just kept trucking. If I could summarize this project in 3 words, it would be trust the process. If I could summarize it in 5 words, it would be trust the process or don't. Because this project, I liked adding the stars on the back though. I did not plan the back cover at all. I was just like, oh, something will come to me or I'll just leave it blank. But I happened to discover a white Posca pen, so I was like, let's add some stars, baby. Now that the actual leatherwork portion of the book is done, and you know what? It looks pretty cool. I won't lie, I'm pretty pleased with it. It's time to add the inside lining. You never guessed it, gamers. It's our old friend, Mr. PVA glue. Say hello. So let's hit that with a little blast. Hit that blast with a little brushy, and then use the bone folder to bone it down. Anyway, this isn't pictured, but I do go back in with a brush and make sure that all the edges are glued down completely. And then here's my final book. Or not, I still need to add the hardware. This went not great. When I say not great, I mean like series of unfortunate events, not great. So, I wasn't filming when this happened, so here's my best artistic recreation of what the hell happened. It broke, okay? It broke. And it kind of broke the mechanism with it too. And I was just sitting on my garage floor at like 1 in the morning going, all right, I guess all of this was for nothing. And then we started trying to troubleshoot. We were able to break the broken pieces of the rivet out of the mechanism. So we fixed that problem, but how the hell are we gonna connect the book to the mechanism now? The rivets won't work, obviously. But then I had a realization. Screw posts, baby. They're already used for a different kind of bookbinding. I don't know what god of crafts was looking down on me that day, but I was able to find some screw posts at the Home Depot that were the exact length I needed. And I was able to acquire those. I assembled the book in my hotel room and then did a victory lap. Now, all that was left was to take this bad boy to New York. Oh, and hammer on some book corners. Those will look cool too. And did I do it? Did I deliver my book? I sure as hell did. They really seemed to like it, and I'm honestly super thrilled about that. It made the whole thing with all of the suffering and agony and misuse of hammers seem worth it. There's me standing like an awkward potato up at the stage. The hell am I doing? But Lewberger was super nice, some of the nicest dudes. But yeah, great job on your off-Broadway stuff, guys. I hope you enjoy the gift. And for the rest of you guys, thanks for your patience while I worked on this stupidly long video. I'll see you next week. Adios.